Hey everyone, it's Book of Katherine. Welcome to my channel and let's get down to some serious business. I bet you are wondering what in the world is the UN Global Migration Compact and what is this thing called UN 21 that I keep hearing about? Agenda 21, Agenda 21. Now that the UN Migration Compact keeps coming up and now that Agenda 21 keeps coming up, what the heck are they and why is the UN involved in the EU and all? And why is the UN involved in immigration at all? And what the heck do the two have to do with one another? And why is it when we talk about this Global Migration Compact that people are saying that's Agenda 21? What is Agenda 21? Well, from the very beginning, every time we've heard about migrant caravans, I have been saying to you, even up from the US border, I have been saying to you, it's the UN. People have been saying, it's leftist groups, it's George Soros. And I have been saying, it's the UN. And over in Europe, people have been saying, is it Soros funding this migration? Is the EU letting our borders go nuts? Is it this? Is it that? And I have been saying, it's the UN. Everyone's been saying, George Soros this, or Tom Steyer that. And I have been saying, it's the UN. And finally, we have the Global Migration Compact from the United Nations that finally confirms for everybody that it is indeed the UN. Everybody understands that the United Nations is involved in immigration now, that it's behind it. They seem to understand that maybe it's been behind it since the year 2000, but they don't understand that it goes all the way back to the year 1991. And as I've shown you on my Twitter feed, the United Nations, as I posted the evidence, they've actually been deleting the pages because they would update this immigration plan, this global migration plan. They would update it every year. They would update this migration plan every single year, and now they're actually removing and deleted those pages. It says URL not found. They had all the PDFs, and it says URL not found, URL not found. So why don't we talk about why the UN is behind migration at all? Why does the UN want migration? Why are they interested in migration across Europe? Why would the UN, a global peacekeeping organization, want 59 million migrants migrating across the European Union and across American borders and across Australia? In fact, the entire Western world, not any other part of the world, just the Western world. Why would they want 59 million migrants migrating across the world in the next 6 years by the year 2025? Because it used to be Agenda 21, and when Donald Trump was elected, they renamed it to 2025. They literally re-released a new plan and named it Agenda 2025. They just put it off a little while. They were like, oh, he'll put a kink in our screws. If Hillary Clinton had been elected, they would have been right on time. So he put a few kinks in their plans. So what does the UN have to do with any of this? Well, today I am dressed like this for you to give you a history lesson. I am dressed with history. I'm going to walk you through history. I'm going to give you evidence walking you all the way from the Native Americans in America and what the Jacksonian Democrats did to them, how it inspired Hitler, and how Hitler's National Socialist agenda, when it was not completed, just carried on to the United Nations, and their leaders went on to complete that agenda through the United Nations and onto the Western world, and how that agenda has been carried out in our society ever so until now. That's my thesis today. I'm going to prove to you how the migrant 59 million people in the next 6 years, which by the way, I know that you think that you've gotten your world leaders to say that they're not going to sign, but read a little closer. If you look at this link right here, you will see Nigel Farage calling out Juncker in 2014 for being the master of saying, if the people cry out and say no, just put it off a little while longer and do it later. Just do it anyway. And that's what Juncker did, isn't it? When the French had a referendum, they just went on and did it anyway. And notice what the Swiss and what the Italian leaders, these shiny, perfect model Italian leaders that said all the right things, but what did they do in action? What did they do in action? They were going to sign this global migration compact. They were signed up, ready to go on December 10th and December 11th. They didn't tell the people that they were planning on doing this. They were going to sign it in secret if you had not said anything. And it would open up all your borders, say, oh, I can't do anything about it. The UN is doing it. We have no control over it. The UN's making us do it. They would have gone along with it because the UN is the EU, as I will prove today. The EU was a formation of the UN. I will prove that for you today. All the economic policies they've adopted, simply all these EU globalization. It's not globalization, it's communism. And I'll prove that today. It's world communism run by the UN. When the Nazi agenda was not carried out, which was National Socialism, the UN went on and they started pushing worldwide communism. And I'm going to prove that to you today. So I'm dressed in history. So Juncker has a pattern. Push it on. So the Swiss and Italian leaders, what are they saying? They're saying, oh, we won't sign it on December 10th and December 11th. What we're going to do instead is we're going to reserve the right to put it in front of Parliament. They didn't say put it in front of Parliament for a vote. They just said until Parliament talks about it, which means that Parliament will enter it and say, hey, we've entered it, and then boom, they can sign it, which means you won't know the date, you won't know the time. Parliament can enter it at any time. It can be officially entered on the floor, and the leaders can adopt it, and you won't know about it. That's the way politics works. That's the way Juncker works, and that's the way the EU has worked forever. Ever since its formation, that's the way the EU has worked. That's the way they get things by on the people all the time, is that when you find out, they just pass it when you're not looking, after the protests go. How can you prevent that? You go ahead and you get your leaders to promise a no forever vote. Make them pass a bill that says we will never work with the UN. A no forever vote on migration compact. We will never sign this. Make them promise a forever no. That's very different, isn't it? We'll never enter it in Parliament. It will never even come to Parliament. We will never look at it. The UN is not in charge of us. Because what Agenda 21 is, it is a world centralized government. And if you don't believe me, then what is this? This is the world government. It's their constitution. The UN already created it. They wrote a constitution. They wrote a constitution 300 pages long when you guys weren't looking. And 174 countries adopted it when you weren't looking and you didn't know about it. That's why they're all ready to adopt it, because they've been on this train for a long time. Socialism and communism makes the elites wealthy. Wealthy as all get out. And I'll show you why. Because they've already been doing it. The UN has already been doing it since the early 1950s, since Nazis fell, and none of the top leaders went to jail. They went out and led the world. They escaped. The Americans and the CIA helped them. You can read that in the books on my list. They escaped, they led the world, and when they led the world, they did the media, they did a ton of campaigns, I'll get into that later. But they started it very early on, and that's what I'm going to prove to you today. And by the 60s and the 70s, Americans were already paying 40% of their paycheck to the government. 40% of their paycheck was going to the government. That's socialism. And today, 2/3 of our federal government goes to 72 welfare recipient programs. And not only that, but 200 billion of that goes to people who aren't even citizens. They go to citizens of other countries. That's communism. That's the UN in control of us. And the proof of that is that when the GOP, current GOP, not the one we just elected, but when the current GOP, who also could change it right now, they're still in control. When they had a chance to change that, when they took over Congress these last 2 years, they could have gone ahead and put it back in check, but they didn't, because they work for the UN. They work for the UN. So when you ask who's behind the global migration, that's the UN. And you ask why? Let me explain to you why. In order to have a world centralized government, you can't have any free societies. And what did the Jacksonian Democrats do with the Native Americans? What did Hitler learn from them? The Jacksonian Democrats, as Dinesh D'Souza said, drove them further west, enslaved the ones who stayed, and killed the ones who fought. Enslaved the ones who stayed, killed the ones who fought. Those Jacksonian Democrats were from the British elites. Remember, I talked about that in my Thanksgiving? And that's how the Republican Party was formed, was from the Jacksonian Democrats of the 1970s, in order to conserve the Constitution and its values for freedom and make sure that slavery never existed in our country and didn't go to the West Coast. That's why Republican Party was even formed, was to conserve the Constitution and conserve freedom for every man and make sure that slavery never existed in our country, ever, and ban that way of life that the British love so dearly, that the elites love so dearly, that the UN and their cultures love so dearly. Because you know, in the religion of Islam, which is the head of the UN at the moment, and China, slavery is legal, as is stoning and all the other fun things. So why the migration? Why 59? Well, let's see where they're migrating from. Africa and the Middle East and Central America. Who is in control of those countries? That would be the UN. The UN is taking the countries that they are in control of, and they are shoving them through the West, because the West is free and independent. And they know that if you shove through the West, just like Hitler learned, if you want to take over, he learned from the Jacksonian Democrats. He learned if you shove through, so he decided to learn from the Jacksonian Democrats. He said, I want to take over, so I will push through the other countries, and I will enslave the ones who stay and kill the ones who fight. And isn't that exactly what Hitler did? And so when Hitler fell, the UN was like, we will learn from that. And the day has come. And they are using those countries, and they are giving them, they look at the videos. You'll find them. Look for them. Isn't that exactly what they have told the people to do? They run through the streets, slashing, burning, raping, pillaging, killing. And isn't it interesting that they've actually said, here's the difference. They say, oh, we're built on immigrants. Well, the immigrants that came in before were not protected from the law, were they? All immigrants that came in before, that Bernie Sanders talks about, and everyone talks about that, all the Democrats talk about. They say, oh, we all came from immigrants. We lived together before. Yes, because they all had to live underneath our laws. But not these migrants, not the migrants of the EU, and not the migrants of the UN. They are all above the law. None of them have to obey the law. Why? Because they have one job: to enslave the ones who stay and kill the ones who fight. Don't you get it? In order for the UN to be a centralized government of the world, the West has to fall. The free governments have to fall. UN 21, Agenda 21, laid it out for us in 1991. And George H.W. Bush, I know he just died. I'm sorry. But we already played video of him saying a new world order when he signed it. So let's go through the history, shall we? Let's go through the history and learn together what the UN has planned for us with the Migration Compact, with Agenda 21, and how it's already living among you in your city, in your town, in your newspaper, and in your churches. Let's begin. Here we go. Part 1. What is the UN Global Migration Compact? It felt so good to hear someone on a major media station actually say the words immigration, borders, and United Nations all in the same sentence.
Now listen, voters in the UK, the EU and across the developed world. This is a call to action. We need you to contact your heads of state to tell them not to sign the UN Global Compact for Migration. UK, get your heads out of the Brexit shambles for a few minutes and listen. On the 10th and 11th of December, our heads of state will be signing this deeply damaging document produced by those highly educated, highly salaried and unelected people at the United Nations. They have produced this compact that will silence free speech, media freedom, and if you think you're in control of your borders, think again. This compact backs the EU and the UN's aim to flood our nations with 59 million migrants by 2025. Yes, you heard right, 59 million migrants by 2025. Yes, the clock is ticking. It's nearly 2019, just 6 years to go. Why are they doing this, I hear you ask? Because in the year 2000, these
And she goes back to the year 2000. She missed 1991. They had already begun deleting the pages, but I had been there before. Now, doesn't that sound different from what you normally hear? What is it that you normally hear? This will sound really familiar to you.
Economic pressure and social volatility from unrestrained immigration. Just 3 years ago, Europe faced its own wave
He said America
of migrants
isn't the only
Africa,
one
Middle
facing
East.
pressure.
The German Chancellor Angela Merkel responded to this by accepting nearly 1 million migrants in a single year.
He was saying America isn't the only one responding to pressure from migrants, right? He's saying Germany is too. And at first I was really impressed because I was like, holy cow, Fox is actually having on German migration, which they never do. We are used to, at least those of us who are diggers and bakers, you know, peace. But diggers and bakers and Reddit users, we're used to finding all these little clips for ourselves, and that's it. The mainstream media doesn't cover it. So I was like, oh my gosh, Tucker's going to do it. But I should have known. He gets all his news and stuff from producers. They give him the clips, a whole series of clips to choose from, and people to interview, and he chooses from that. That's how his show happens. And this is what happened. Days before the Migration Compact.
This country taking in 4 million in just 12 months. 3 years after that, how has that decision affected Germany and Merkel's political career? Rick Cannell is the current U.S. ambassador to Germany, and he joins us tonight. Ambassador, thanks very much for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I talked right through it. So what he was saying was, is that, you know, we're facing migration crisis, but Germany, Angela Merkel has let in the equivalent of us letting in 4.5 million migrants in, or did they say 4 million? 4.5 million migrants in 3 years. If we had done it in 3 years, that's how much she did in 3 years in Germany. That's the impact she's had. And so he's having on Ambassador Richard Grenell, or Rick Grenell, whatever you want to say, Ambassador Rick Grenell, on to explain, like, why she's done that, even though she's stepping down. Interesting that this is happening just days before the Global Migration Compact, the UN Global Migration Compact, is about to happen. Notice there's no, like, let's see if UN Global Migration Compact is about to be mentioned. Let's see if that's actually happening. We have flooded our border. This happened just days ago. Just days ago this interview happened. So we have a caravan at our border. And so what he does, Tucker says, let's go talk to Germany. They just had a flood at their border. And Merkel's about to step down. You know, let's see how politicians do it. They step down and make it sound like it's all over. You know, and so he has on Richard Grenell, our ambassador, to say, explain to us why she did that and what impact having, you know, the equivalent of us having in 4 million migrants. What impact is that having on Germany? Let's see what he says. Let's see what Grenell has to say.
Hey, Tucker. So you're starting to see even figures on the left, John Kerry and Hillary Clinton most prominently, but others rethinking the political fallout from Merkel's decision to do that in Germany. From where you sit, what was the effect of letting in those migrants?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the political effect. There was no plan in place, so the policy really fell apart. Chancellor Merkel and many in Germany had big hearts. They wanted to do something, but there wasn't a plan. And so even Chancellor Merkel now, all these years later, has agreed that there was no plan, and therefore the entire policy kind of fell apart because it wasn't implemented with you know, hardcore security measures and follow-up. So from the political standpoint, next week, Chancellor Merkel is giving up her chairmanship of the party. There are 3 other people running, and the top issue, one of the top issues.
And that's all he says. He keeps talking big heart. There was no plan in place, and she just had a big heart. Isn't that familiar? Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? Do you want to know? Does that sound familiar? It sounds so familiar, doesn't it? Chancellor Merkel just had a big heart, but now she's stepping down. Oh, interesting. And is there any mention? You know, they just didn't have a plan in place, and they should have had a plan in place. But now we know because of amazing people like Brigitte. Oh, I love her. So because, not ACC Brigitte, a video that I will link below and I'll talk about later, but because of activists like you and me, freedom fighters, because they got the word out about the UN Global Compact, because they found out about it and flyered and did all those things I talked about earlier this year in April, because they got the word out. That's the only way it got off the ground. But oh no, not because of this interview. Would you like to know why Richard Grenell said that Angela Merkel had a big heart and that there was no plan in place, when you and I know frickin' good and well that there was a plan in place, that it was a very specific plan in place? Let me show you why. Because this would be Richard Grenell's profile. Do you notice anything? Anything at all? Does anything stick out to you? Anything? Do you see the words United Nations there? You know, something that reads like, longest serving U.S. spokesman at the United Nations. Republican Party. How many times do I have to say it? A Google search would have found it. So Richard Grenell is sitting there saying there was no plan in place. There was no plan in place. She just had a big heart. This is how they do it, folks. The UN was always in charge, and I always said that Angela Merkel worked for the UN. Would you like further proof of that? Are you ready for me to drop some serious truth on you? Are you ready? Let's go for some more evidence. Boom. One Reich, one Führer. One Union, one Europe. You think that's a coincidence? Do you seriously think that's a coincidence? It was not Germany who put the EU together. Who was the one that put the EU together? That's right, that was George Soros. And George Soros, who has done everything the United Nations laid out. Line up Agenda 21. And that's what we're going to do today, folks. That's what we're going to do today. Socialism, National Socialist Agenda, which we're going to go over today. EU. She just works. She just works for them, folks. She's never worked for Germany, and she's never worked for Europe. She's only ever worked for the United Nations. Let's continue on with some history. Let's do it. Part 3. I am now going to connect Nazism, Agenda 21, and communism all wrapped into one for you, so that you can understand how the Global Migration Compact is actually connected to the UN, is connected to world communism, is connected to centralized government control of the world, and how it happened through history. As you know, George Soros, you hear about him all the time. You know that he funds the entire left, right? You know that he is everywhere. If you research him, you can see documentary after documentary on him. It's well documented. If you look into it, if you really pay attention, you'll notice that the UN, the dictatorships of the world, all things outlined in here just happen to fit everything in there. And isn't it an interesting funneling of money that dictatorships can just go through all those agencies? All the dictatorships of the world can just funnel money through one name, and no one would ever know. Agenda 21 was founded in 1991, and George Soros founded Open Society in 1993. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? 1993 was the year that Bill Clinton went into office and signed the executive order for Agenda 21 to start in America. So the same year that Agenda 21 went into America was the same year that George Soros started Open Society in America. And that would be the same time that he began the EU. Interesting, the EU that ended up being exactly the outline of one Reich, one Führer. Yep, I'm going to connect it all for you today. So, let's listen to the Nazi agenda, shall we? And see if it's the same as the left. What you know is the Democratic Party platform. You need to know what the Nazi agenda was first. And this clip does a great job. See if you recognize any of it. And don't worry about Soros. Don't think about any names. I want you to pay attention to the concepts, because these concepts we're going to hear about in Agenda 21 in just a few seconds afterwards. So listen in.
The very term Nazi is a compression of two words, Nacional and Socialista. Check out the official Nazi platform. State-controlled healthcare, profit sharing for workers and large corporations, money lenders and profiteers punished by death, state control of education, state control of media and the press, state control of banks and industries, seizure of land without compensation, state control of religious expression. This reads like something
All right, so did you hear that stuff? Does it sound familiar? So these things of state control That was for Nazi Germany, all right? For Nazi Germany, it would have been Germany being in control of. For Nazi Germany, it would have been state control, or a country in control of religious expression. It would have been media expression. So freedom of speech, freedom of religion, gone, right? It was also control of banks, also of industry. It was also of land without compensation. Okay. Now, what's Agenda 21? When the Nazis fell, here's what you don't know. Everyone thinks that Hitler just stood alone, that he was one man. There's the most censored book on the planet that people don't know about. And that would be The Devil's Chemists. And I'm so grateful to have found it. So grateful to have found it. So grateful to have found it. So grateful. Oh God, they try to bury this thing. They say like everything erases it, but it's so interesting. Oh, okay, I could go into it. You can search my Twitter feed for what I say about it. So very buried. So very buried. Why? Because this book outlines. It outlines how Roosevelt was complicit in the Holocaust. Oh God. But it also outlines how it wasn't Hitler. It wasn't. Like, Hitler was funded by Ford and Bayer and all these companies, you guys. It was the globalists. He was driven, and all these concentration camps, like they were making chemicals and dyes for free. Like that's what they wanted, was the free labor. It was a world war because the chemical companies, IG Farben, that was that they split up after Germany broke up. When that side lost, IG Farben, that's why they didn't go to jail, you guys. That's why the Nuremberg trials, I was horrified because after the Nuremberg trials, I found out about the Nuremberg trials from this. They let guys off. They let the worst perpetrators off. And if you look at this map right here, you see that the IG Farben cartel, I don't know if you can see it right there, but if you see all those little black dots, can you see those? Oh God, that stupid thing. Okay. Can you see all those little dark dots? That's where they had nests. That's how far across the globe they were. And what's really scary is that when you look up AI of IBM, that's exactly like the map, the same map. It's exactly like that. It's spread exactly like that. And so that's what we were fighting. We are fighting all of those. Like it was funded. They were fighting for the world. And when it fell, they formed the UN. And then they saved all the SS and all the higher ups. They let the lower men fall. Sorry. They let the lower guys take it. And they told all of Americans that they did. But this guy, J.E. Du Bois, who blew the whistle on Roosevelt. Because you know what Roosevelt did? He actually shut down immigration when the Jews were trying to flee Europe. I could just go into it. I get really upset about it. But like all this stuff, and the thing is that Americans, like the stuff that was going on with the progressives back then, gosh darn, like we had like 20 states or something that was like legalizing sterilization and knocking off all these families. Like our entire population was just knocked out because the Democrats of the time were just sterilizing women, entire families, and like, oh, our history has been wiped. Like there's entire things of like the 1910s and the 1920s they don't teach us about. And that's where Hitler got he got the ideas of the gas chambers, and IG Farben provided the gas for the gas chambers. But this guy, J.E. Du Bois, which is why I say don't knock on people about their money. He was the son of a great timber company, and he So he had money. Money doesn't determine anything. It's what you do with it. It's your character. You can have money and still be a good guy. Freaking, it's your character. You know poor people who are awful, and you know poor people who are good. Give me a freaking break. That really ticks me off. It's your character. And he went in and he saved. He wrote a memo and he said, I'll go to the press if you don't, and I'll say what you're doing to the Jews of Germany. And Theodore Roosevelt had to reverse it, and it ultimately led to us going into the war. You know, and actually doing World War II. Because there was so much anti-Semitism in the government, and he blew the whistle on it. And then they put him in charge of the trials at the Nuremberg trials. And for a long time, I can't say everything that I know, but I'm sorry. But read this book, The Devil's Chemist, and Amazon will say there are no copies. But I know for a fact from me and my friends who have bought it, it'll say that there's like only 2 copies left, and it'll price it really high, like at $150. But we've all bought it, and it still says there's 2 copies left. There's plenty of copies. They just don't want you buying it. It was a huge book, a huge seller. Everyone knew his name. They even have streets named after him. He's a hero, a national hero. Anyway, so the point is that these huge chemical companies are the ones that drove the war. And so when it didn't win, when the communism didn't win, communism was supposed to spread. The National Socialist Party, the Marxism, they funded, we know from Dick Morrison, the stuff that came out in Germany, Germany actually funded Marxism in Russia. So Russia actually had Marxism because all the crowds there, they were actually just paid crowds. So we know that was actually funded by Germany as well. Those crowds didn't come up because they just wanted Marxism. No, they were funded just like Crowds on Demand here. Crowdsondemand.com. None of them really want it. They just get paid to go and march. Everything on camera is fake. So yeah, so when they didn't get world socialism, what did they form? They were like, here, we'll give the Jews, they told the world, we'll give the Jews their homeland if you give us the UN. And then what did they do with the UN? They began world socialism because they won. Don't forget, they won socialism in China. The same elites who funded it, the same cartel, got it in China, and they got Marxism in the Soviet Union, and they wiped out millions of people. But they didn't get it in Europe, and they didn't get it in the West, and they still wanted it. And how do we know that? Because an insider before me came out and wrote, Carroll Quigley. He wrote Tragedy and Hope. And he gave us a very detailed account of it. If you think I'm detailed in my research, he just embarrassed me with his research. Talk about a historian. He dumped their crap on us. He told us everything. Every line, item, and detail of their insider secrets. And he told us what was coming. And he told us how they planned on doing it. He said environmentalism. And on the very front of his cover, when he published it, he said one thing that touched me. He said, to all who care and seek to help. Which is why it's on my reading list. Of course, if you can't get through it, you can do The Naked Capitalist. The guy doesn't like Carroll Quigley. He's an FBI guy who is on the inside, and he writes amazingly. It's much shorter, and it'll give you the gist, and it'll summarize it. He doesn't like Carroll Quigley, but that's okay. I think they're both heroes. It's shorter. But both of them tell us. They say, through environmentalists, they're coming for us. And now we'll go on to part 4. So I've shown you, like, this is it. Oh, no, I didn't show you. I show you. Let's look at Agenda 21. So you've seen Nazism. They're coming for us. Sorry, I will show you now how these things, state-controlled religious media, banks, industry, land grabs, how they now plan on doing that through the UN through Agenda 21. I'll show you. They don't plan on doing it through state, through a country. They're doing this through the United Nations. I'll show you how. This is UN 21 in 5 minutes or less.
At its core, Agenda 21 is about control. Control over land, natural resources, and entire populations. It seeks to control the air by regulation of carbon emissions, the ground by sustainable development, and the sea through environmental regulations. Officially stated, Agenda 21 is a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations system, governments, and major groups in every area in which human impacts on the environment. Because being human will always have an impact on the environment, Agenda 21 paves the way for extraordinary UN control. When you boil it down, there are 9 basic tenets of Agenda 21. Move citizens off private land and into urban housing. Create vast wilderness spaces inhabited by life.
That's going to start scaring the crap out of you if I get a little bit too into it. But let's get to the basics of it. It says a comprehensive, and this is in like page 1 or 2 of the UN. You can order it on Amazon. Scarily enough. They try to take it off for a while, I think. But basically it says a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally. Globally, nationally, and locally. So, globally, they already have 174 countries signed on. So that is what like the UN Global Migration Compact is. Nationally, that's like the EU, right? Locally, I happen to know what Agenda 21 lines out. I happen to know it. I happen to know it really well. It talks about community and uses socialism, ideas of socialism and communism, and it does it all through community. It writes it. I've read through the 300 pages and I've studied it quite extensively. You can study it yourself. And little local paper that you can pick up, and I blocked out the name for you here. But I went through it and I counted, let's see, on this page, hey, look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the first page. Advertisements for UN 21. One on the next page. Another one on the very next page. And, rally will focus on climate, jobs, and justice. Pure Agenda 21. I already know Agenda 21. There's another one. If I remember correctly, this one page, church, that's right, a church. This one focuses on economic and environmental justice. A whole church built for it. What is this church's name? It is called, wait, the church's name is now, it's a new church. I don't know how long it's been around. Unitarian Universalist. Built for UN 21. That's locally. And do you know what they do? Because I've started reading these articles since I've learned about UN 21. Do you know what they do locally? They override your laws. They override democracy. Instead of voting on laws and doing petitions, they start reading your little community. It's not just in the community local papers. It's actually in your actual paper. Like, go read your paper and you'll see how often they use the word community. Every time you see community, it actually means communism or socialism. Go ahead and read through and you'll notice, if you really read, you'll notice that what they're saying is gather together as a community to discuss how we can utilize public spaces in a new, safe, and environment-friendly way and make some new community guidelines to use public spaces. And let's make some private spaces into more public spaces. Do you understand? What they're doing is they're overriding the democratic system and using community organizing because they know about this. They get the community and the local socialists involved, and they override the laws that you guys voted in, that the police voted in. And it's happening. And then state-run, they fund things called Global 2020 or Arizona 2030 or State Fair 2030 or Live Free 2030 or, oh, it's happening in the Arab countries. It was Arab World 2030. Oh, they have it in the public schools. They're introducing Sharia in the public schools called like Live Now 2030 or Future Vision 2020. That it always has like 2020 or 2030 or something, or it always says Live Now or Democracy Now or Live Die or something, some two-word thing and then a date after it. And then it'll be something like this. Now we can watch the rest. And it's happening at a global, national, and local level, as you saw in your paper.
Impacts on the environment. Because being human will always have an impact on the environment, Agenda 21 paves the way for extraordinary UN control. When you boil it down, there are 9 basic tenets of Agenda 21. Move citizens off private land and into urban housing. Create vast wilderness spaces inhabited by large carnivores. Eliminate cars and create walkable cities. Support chosen private businesses with...
Yes, support chosen private businesses with public funds. Gosh, doesn't that sound exactly like what we just heard in the Nazi agenda? Support chosen private businesses with public funds for sustainable development. They've used environmentalism for that. And what else did they say? They said eliminate cars and create walkable cities. Move people out of wider areas and put that. What are they doing? Where are they sending the migrants? Now let me show you this. So are you getting what I'm saying? Like it overlaps. They are literally, I guess we'll keep on watching it. It's less than 5 minutes. But it's everything. It's just really scary.
Support chosen private businesses with public funds for sustainable development. Make policy decisions that...
Did you hear that? Private businesses. It's straight up Nazi agenda. Are you hearing it? It's straight up. It's freaking exactly it.
Favor the greater good over individuals. Drastically reduce the use of power, water, and...
Greater good over individuals. What is that? What is that? That's communism. That's socialism. And we know from China, watch China Uncensored, there's no difference. No difference. And you guys in the EU know exactly what it's like hearing about the common good over the individual. And us in the United States, we learned in the Obama years exactly what that's like. In fact, we've been living it for much longer with that, which I'm about to prove.
Anything else that creates carbon pollution. Use bureaucracies to make sweeping decisions outside of democratic processes. Increase taxes, fees, and regulations. And finally...
Oh! Increase taxes, fees, and regulations. That's France. You're burning to the ground right now, aren't you, France? Because of increases, taxes, fees. Oh, I believe that's Seattle right now. You're 10 cities because of taxes, fees, and regulations. Are you seeing where Agenda 21 is? Everywhere? It's everywhere. And that's the UN. It's not the left. It's not George Soros.
Policies meant to incentivize a reduced population.
This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to 0. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service.
Oh, whatever. This is just, you'll see it. I'll include that video right here if you want to see it. My point is that I have just proved to you from Dinesh D'Souza's video, which will be down below, or you saw it linked, to that video, which is this. They're the same thing. And they didn't just start it in 1991. Thank you, George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, for giving us in 1991 and 1993 this beautiful thing. And thank you oh so much, Hillary Clinton and President Obama, for actually, because you know what? President Obama and the DNC and Nancy Pelosi, who introduced this on the House floor. You can actually find video of it. When the DNC had control with President Obama in his first 2 years of office, remember how they tripled the government? Do you remember that? They tripled the government size and now the executive branch is 3 million people large. Do you know what they were doing? Do you have any idea what they were doing? Land grabs with no compensation. That, my friends, is the EPA. Duarte Farms. It's happening every day. And isn't it interesting where it's happening? It's happening in all the zones that Agenda 21 outlined. You think Hunger Games was scary? Hunger Games ain't got nothing on where they're moving us. So I'm going to tell you right now, when they talk about bringing in migrants and they're trying to move us off the land, let me ask you something. Does it sound a little bit familiar like this?
Let me answer it this way. First of all, who were the people who took the American Indians off their ancestral lands, drove them further west, enslaved the ones who stayed, killed the ones who resisted? The answer, the Jacksonian Democrats of the 19th century. They did it. Now, what is the proof of this? This is very interesting. The proof of this, weirdly enough, is Hitler himself. When Hitler was sitting in Landsberg prison, Hitler had a problem, and the problem was that he wanted Germany to be a superpower in the way that Britain and France were, the superpowers of Europe. And Hitler was thinking, we have to do this through colonialism, because...
And now the UN wants to be a superpower, and all the lands are taking. And how do they do that?
That's how the British and the French became powerful. The British run India, they run half of Africa, the French have colonies all over the world. Hitler thought, Germany needs to do that. But he realized, but there's nothing left to take. All the real estate on the planet has been sort of occupied. So how can Germany become a great power? And then Hitler realized. Andrew Jackson figured out how to do that in the United States. His formula was really simple. Drive the Indians off their land, kill the ones who resist, enslave the ones who remained. In other words, Jackson didn't have to leave his neighborhood. He performed genocide and colonialism right at home. And Hitler said, I got to do that. I got to take a page from the Jacksonian Democrats. I don't need to go hunting for India or Africa. I'm going to take the Poles, the Slavs, the Eastern Europeans, the Russians. I'm going to throw them off their land. If they resist, I'll kill them. If they stay back, I'll enslave them. I want every German to live on a farm. This is Adolf Hitler.
Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? 59 million in 6 years? Every migrant living on a farm, does that sound familiar? The same people. Isn't that interesting? Do you think they liked losing World War II? Do you think they were going to take defeat? Do you realize that George Soros says that his happiest years were the years that he was occupied by Nazi Germany? Do you get that? Do you think it's funny that the EU is the exact same thing as one Reich, one Führer? Did you think that the people of Europe wouldn't be taken off their land as it was done in Germany? Did you forget that Hitler himself said that the Christian culture was weak and that he wished you were the ones of the Muhammads because the Muhammads had a stronger religion for violence and death? Now, who runs the UN? Have you seen a UN Watch video? That would be Islam. But there's a silent partner that none of you sees. They never say a word. That would be China. The red giant. The communist giant of them all. The one that has the greatest military in the world. And they work from one side with the largest military in the world. And Soros works from the other side with Islam. And the UN wins. Agenda 21. World communism ruled by the UN dictators, the elite few. And I know some of you say, how can Islam and communism come together as one? Well, you better watch my video that says that liberalism and Islam actually fits pretty frickin' well together. And I apologize to my liberal friends that I said liberal and communism together, liberalism and Islam together. I apologize for you because I had to say liberal, because in Europe they are still called liberals. The leftists are actually called liberals. But I have a lot of friends who are classical liberals. You know what I mean? Communists. Why don't we say the word communist? Because they've prepackaged it as socialism? As Agenda 21, they've repackaged it as socialism. But let me tell you what it really is. It's environmentalism. And they started it the moment the UN formed. You want to know how? You want to know how they did it? Let's go into our final history lesson, shall we? Let me scare the pants off you about how they're doing it. When you read J.E. Du Bois' book, do you remember what he was terrified about? He was terrified that it would all happen again because they all got away. We all covered up for them. We helped them all escape. Some people try to cry out. But even the best of us who said environmentalism is coming, their books were taken off the shelf within a week. And we never heard their cries. Instead, when we heard Earth Summit in 1991, and we saw the label green, and recycling came to all of our homes and doors without our vote, we thought it was a good thing, because we'd been trained oh so well, because when the Nazis left Germany, and the Nazis and the anti-Semites that ran Ford and ran IG Farben and ran Bayer and now run Monsanto and all the other companies at the top. Did you know Bayer and Monsanto just merged? Control, food, water, all of it. I bet you didn't know. You know the World War ended in 1945. Bet you didn't know in the 40s TV didn't actually do very well. TV programming was going down at the end of the 40s. Studios weren't making it. Studios weren't making TV programming because it's the movie business that people wanted. Because in America, in a democracy, in capitalism, the customer is always right, right? But not in socialism, not in communism, not in China, not in the US, and not in Europe anymore. How often do you hear your sales associate or even your friends say, oh, but the advertisers want it this way? That's the boss on top. In capitalism, the customer is always right. You serve the customer. It's in socialism that Big Brother says what happens to you. That's what happens in socialism. It's the same as Big Brother, the advertisers. Everyone says CNN does the Russia story for ratings. They say, oh, it's good for advertising. It's big business. Oh, except that CNN's the last. It's 13th in ratings, below Nickelodeon. How can it be good for business? Oh, no, no, no. UN funding, astroturfing. No, no, no. Customer is not always right. Not in socialism. Not in the UN world. Not when it's a centralized government controlling the media. Because in the 90s, Bill Clinton signed over the CIA. Said journalists can work completely freely, no longer just 400. The entire journalist society worldwide can work with the media. 1996, that was a great year. Let's go back to the 1950s, right after the Nuremberg trials when they were all released. 1940s, programming in television was going down, and yet all of a sudden, what happened to TV sales? They were at $3 million a year in 1949. All of the criminals were released, put in upper-level sales positions, head of global corporations, in especially Hollywood, sent to Hollywood in America. And look what happened to sales in exactly 1949 to 1959. And then they leveled off. And what began? The 60s, where they all wanted communism. All the kids wanted communism and fought for Vietnam without ever seeing any of the death and destruction, hanging people on meat hooks, shoving them in tiger cages. Oh, no, no, no. Oh, no, no, no. Even I, taught in school, I was never taught a single thing that the Viet Cong did. Not a thing. I was only taught what horrible Americans were. I had no idea. I learned today with the Viet Cong. I had no idea. No idea about the boat people, you know, and why refugees were going years later, 10 years later, boat people trying to escape. And now, guess what Warren Buffett's doing? Oh, they're leaving China all right. They're leaving their business from China. And you know where they're moving it to? Vietnam. They always move their companies to a communist country. Isn't that interesting? The global elite always work with communists. Always. So, they up the TVs, our birth rates go down, and after they put out the TVs, what's the next thing that the UN does? Let's see. IG Farben, big chemical companies, splits up. Ford goes its way, all the big companies split up. What do they do after that? Let's see.
You want to make sure you feel that sense of responsibility. Beginning in the 1950s, big beverage companies like Coca-Cola and Anheuser-Busch, along with Philip Morris and others, formed a nonprofit called Keep America Beautiful. Its mission was to educate and encourage environmental stewardship in the public. That's right, the makers of soda, beer, and cigarettes got together in an unholy trinity to create an environmental group that surely had no possible ulterior motive. If you were lucky enough to be alive in the early 1970s, you might remember shag carpets, pet rocks, and the famous crying Indian ad. A thoughtless driver throws a bag of trash out the window, and the Indian sheds a single sad tear.
Oh, that's right. Award-winning ad. Hollywood gave it awards. When was that group formed? The 1950s. Under the banner green, environmentalism, globalism, a big heart, migration. It's all communism, and it all has one goal: a one-world centralized government, poverty for all, depopulation in the end. And no votes for you, for me, for any of us, and a lot of bloodshed in between. So when I say to hand out flyers about Agenda 21, I'm not choosing my words lightly. I don't say to flyer about much else. This is deadly serious. This is coming rapidly. And it's something that we vote on every day. And as you can see, they put in Republicans, that work with the UN. We have to choose people like you and me that live in the real world, that don't take bribes, that can see past climate change, who know that the Earth has only warmed 0.8 degrees from 1880 to 2013, 0.8 degrees. Nobel laureates are like, what the heck? The research is ridiculous. The 97% of scientists, it turns out that quote, I looked up the actual research paper. It's like 97% of scientists of the 35% who actually said something. It's like 97% of the percent of the percent of the percent. It's not 90% of the people surveyed, and every politician knew that. But of course, Soros funded it. And who do you think funded that? Who do you think? We know Soros funded the 97% research paper, but gee, it supported climate change. I keep saying Soros is behind the UN. Will somebody please join me in saying the UN? It's not just migration. It's everything environmental, and it is serious. And when I say move out of the cities, I mean it. And when I say don't fall for it, Europe, get out of the EU, I mean it. It is not just supposed to be a united Europe. It's to be a united world. And they don't want just third world poverty for the African continent or for China. They want it for you too. They dream of it. They salivate over you. And you need to be stronger than Britain, and you need to get out, and you need to get out fast, and you need to be wanting it more than everyone who comes in from Africa. They have passion and they have faith because they believe that they own the earth. You need to start reading the Quran and seeing that their faith actually links up with the things that the UN 21 says. UN 21 promises global domination. Well, gosh, that links up with their faith just fine. Global domination. So they have a faith that drives right in. So they can use them easily. Drive right over. And what did it say? To the one, enslave the ones who stayed and kill the ones who, they have soldiers ready to do that. They have a religion that actually says, look up Islam. Islam has a history of 270 million dead. That's almost 3 times the size of communism. 270 million dead because they will kill anyone who does not accept Islam. That's your fate. They have brought in people who are more than happy to mow you down. The moment they're given the go-ahead, the moment they vote in Sharia, you're dead. You're gone. That's why Islam and the left meet. Because Islam requires a huge state, and so does Agenda 21. Socialism is a huge state. And if you guys don't wake up and get willing to fight and start moving and get energized and use a freedom fight of anything in your bones and body, I don't care if it's joining Border Patrol. I don't care if it's joining a software group. I don't care if it's joining an analyst group. I don't care if it's joining a think tank. But you have to join the fight some way if you want to run for an office. But you've got to get involved, because if you are not involved, if you are not making flyers and spreading the word about Agenda 21 and researching it and making videos yourself and getting it out there online and getting on BitChute, because I know YouTube is really pushing down any creator's content, but you can still do it. You can still get it out there. Please, if you're not part of the solution, then you're going to be one of the sheep that goes along to the slaughter. That's, just think of it this way. That's what they want. They want you. They want you to stand quietly by. That's socialism. Mute, deaf, silent gray people. You need to be in Technicolor. That's what freedom is. Vibrance, life, energy, noise, Technicolor. Shine. Shine against this. We used to be nations that brought freedom to other countries, but now they're bringing those countries to us. The UN has ruled other countries for so long, and now they've brought them to our door. It really is World War III all over again. And the sooner we wake up to the fact that the conditions of World War III, listen to Victor Davis Hanson, listen to the Devil's Chemist, all the conditions have been met. We are back in World War III, even if the news doesn't report it. China is a much greater threat than the Soviet Union ever was. But we're strong, and we're together. And the worst thing, the biggest danger to them is an informed public. And every one of us is a massive bomb waiting to go off. Because we have a voice. We still have a voice. Imagine if you sent out 100 flyers and put them on cars, put them in baskets at the grocery stores, like this amazing team did, and change the world, and accept no forever only from your politicians, or run yourselves. I love you so much. I'm Book of Katherine, and I'm proud to make this video for you. I'm proud to know this history. I'm proud to have found it, and I'm grateful for my illness that enabled me to find all of this, because I know I would have missed it otherwise. So I'm thankful, and I'm thankful for you and your amazing courage to watch this video. You are incredible. You're a star. I love you, and we are going to beat this back. Freedom will win. Information is power. And baby, information is all we got. Booyah. Links in the description box below. Please donate. Give it up for my bling. Peace out, babies. This was a really difficult video for me to make. Hardest thing I've ever done. But I'm pretty freaking proud, right? We're gonna beat this thing, right? Boom. Boom. Pow. Peace out. Oh, right. Watch these videos. And please share. Share. Longest video I've ever made. Worth it. Oh. Bye now. Love you. You want to say hi, Tazzy? You want to say hi? Come here. Oh, we get a Taz Cat hi. Say hello. No, we never get a Taz Cat hi. You want to say hi? You want to say hi? You do. Hello. What a cutie bear. Well, that's about the best gift we ever. We've never got a Taz Cat hi. Yay! That's got to count for something. Mwah! I love you guys. Bye.